Okay, everybody, this is a real treat. This is going to be my second interview installment, and this one is near and dear to my heart. You are going to meet Donna Davidge today, and I had the privilege over the last several months of getting to be in a writer's accountability group with Donna. So she is just a wealth of information, as you're going to hear as I introduce her. And I cannot wait for you to hear some of the wisdom that came out of the conversation that she and I had.
I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s, thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm gonna help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day.
So welcome back, everybody. It is a really special podcast for me because we have Donna Davidge with us. And I had the pleasure of meeting Donna through a writer's accountability group. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Miss Donna Davidge. Keenly interested in health and exploration, Donna Davidge is a highly experienced 500 ERYT yoga teacher. She received her master in nutrition in the late 70s, and in 1985, she discovered Kundalini yoga in New York City, practicing and studying this form of yoga as a powerful tool for healing and personal growth. She is certified by 3HO and Yoga Alliance. She has taught tens of thousands of hours of yoga and meditation in New York City and at her Sewell House Retreat Center in Maine, which was ranked second by USA Today's 2023 Reader's Choice Award. Donna has appeared in print, on radio, and on television, including on Martha Stewart and Good Morning America. She has a YouTube channel, has published 2 DVDs, and 2 audio classes. She is honored to have been interviewed by Integral Yoga magazine on the relationship between yoga and emotion. She was the yoga columnist for Inner Tapestry in New England from 2000 to 2013. And in 2019, her memoir, Balancing with Bunions, was published. Most recently, she has been writing a book she plans to try and publish soon on the healing powers of Kundalini yoga. So let's welcome Donna. So Donna Davidge is here today to talk to us about her expertise in yoga. And so I'm not even gonna ask her very many questions today. We're gonna let her inform us. And of course, if there's something that I think my listeners really would like to know more about Donna, I will certainly ask that of you as we go. But let's just start by having you tell us about you. Tell us your story.
Yeah, that sounds great because that's what you're thinking is people telling their story. And I just love stories myself. On a certain aside, I'm in New York City right now, and I went to a Georgia O'Keeffe thing with a student the other day, and I wanted to buy her biography, but I have such a list of books that I want to read because I find people's lives so interesting. Not even like I'm a particular art person or Georgia O'Keeffe. So the bottom line is we all have a story, yes. And so because we're talking about yoga, I will talk a little bit in that direction with me. I have been teaching yoga based out of New York City since the mid-1980s. And then in 1997, I purchased on a total wing and a prayer my great-grandparents' historic home in northern Maine and created a retreat called Sewell House. in 2019, I self-published a memoir called Balancing with Bunions, which has a reason behind it. However, I'm realizing of late that it could have been called Saving Soul House, because there's a whole story behind that where I think the yoga saved me. And then when I wanted to share it with others, someone I was seeing at the time was like, you love Northern Maine, you love your family history, which is also very rich up in Northern Maine, not world renowned, but very rich, and you love yoga. So that's what happened in 1997. And that has been a labor of love, which this year got voted by the readership as #2 by USA Today newspaper. And they had this ongoing competition of 10 best in the world. And I mean, wherever in the country, whatever. And for yoga retreats, we came in #2.
Which let's just stop there and be like, oh my goodness, that is such a huge accomplishment. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And some of the people that have known me a long time, I wrote on Facebook, we've seen your determination to provide excellence and you've worked so hard at this. And honestly, in each of our life stories, I think that's all we can do. And there's always going to be downs and there's always going to be ups and there's always going to be challenges. So thank you. This was a great reward for all the years of me and different staff that have helped me over the years. And also the people that have come over the years that voted for us. And so, yeah, so that's a big accomplishment, I would say, many years into running the retreat and many years into teaching yoga. So I think in one of my favorite forms of yoga, Kundalini yoga, the most important mantra there is keep up.
Yeah.
And I think like that's what we've done. We've kept up with this retreat dream of sharing it with others. And by the way, Natalie, when I started this retreat, there was not this yoga craze and all this yoga
in the 80s. No, not probably.
No. And so I was kind of this anomaly. And then I just felt it was so healing. So yes, it is great for the physical body, but I know you are very much about self-care. And when you get into your yoga philosophy and your yoga lifestyle and your yoga practice, it really, really helps with that balance. And so it's a great adjunct to things like what you do with people. And it's more and more as an adjunct, really, with people, trying to improve their lives through therapy and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've started to coin, instead of balance, because I think that we talk about balance a lot, but balance gives us this idea that like, if I work this much, then I'm going to have to offset it this much with self-care. And the more I work in this field, the more I see it as an integration, which is one of the things I really appreciate about yoga is a lifestyle. Yoga is a philosophy. Yoga is not just I'm going to go do a Jane Fonda routine over at the gym. I mean, for some people it turns into that, but certainly if you're practicing it in the way that I think women like you are helping us to understand, it's more of an integration into who you are as a person.
Yes, definitely. And, again, I'm not going to talk just about Kundalini, but that's the one that was most life-changing for me at age 30, which was 38 years ago.
Say more about that. Yeah. Why was that?
A mantra that we focus on there, Sat Nam. And Sat Nam means true identity. So what is each one of ours own real identity? And so when you said to tell my story, I think a lot of us are raised, and I was one of them, to get an education. That is important. And so I went ahead and I got a master's in nutrition, and I was on that trajectory to get a PhD, and I was, thinking of that, and my career was going very well and very strong. And I was in a very good marriage, but I was young and I did not know who Donna was. And so I left my marriage, I left my career, and I went on a very exploratory journey, which on certain levels was very, I want to say poverty stricken, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually. I was not a lot of people are in 12-step programs or addicts. It wasn't that. It was more like I'm a very determined, passionate person that was like, I am not happy with this thing called life. What can I find that will help me? What can I do? And there were certain things that took me to yoga. But when I found this one form of yoga, after some of this challenging time I pushed myself into, it was life-changing and started to pivot me in this direction of integration that you just talked about, where I realized what things I was doing in my life were constructive. And that many things I were doing, not just physical things, like people eating the wrong food or drinking too much alcohol or taking too much recreational drugs or any recreational drugs, whatever your choice is. It was also behaviors. And interestingly enough, I'm sure you help people with behaviors. This one form of yoga really, really helped me with behaviors, just because the way that
Okay.
you taught it, the way it was taught. And then I started going into these other ones, which really helped me as a teacher once yoga exploded, because I have delved into many forms of yoga and practiced them very, I'd say, hardcore and diligently. Things that are popular, like Ashtanga yoga, Iyengar yoga, Dharma yoga, Vinyasa yoga, and then the more meditational side, which is restorative yoga, Nidra yoga, Yin yoga. And so I teach all of those now, and I integrate them into what the person needs, or even what I need that day. And so I think there's so much to know. And I think, like you said, if someone goes to the gym, which is one of the first places I started teaching for many years, I was chanting with people's eyes closed, and they're like, "You're teaching that in health clubs?" And I was like, well, yeah, because I think it works and people are doing it. So you can find your path into whatever yoga will do for you in many different places, including when you go to the gym. You never know.
Right.
You never know.
You don't ever know. Your experience in your 30s finding Kundalini, is that how you say it? Yoga,
Right.
is exactly the clients that I work with. I talk about working with women in midlife, and I know that when we kind of go, ooh, 30s, that's not midlife. But what I'm really kind of grasping to help people with is, though, when they figure out this thing that they don't have an identity, that they've been doing the thing they thought they were supposed to do, very diligently taught socially, by culture, by their families, by their religions, and yet they're not happy. Like, they don't know who they really are. And there's something that's, just there's this level of dissatisfaction. For some of us, it's a fantastic, like, crash and burn. It doesn't have to be, though. It could just be something very subtle, like I'm yearning for something more here. So why do you think it is that yoga called to you this way?
Well, first of all, I think it was interesting when I did meet with Ron Davidge, my first husband, like 15 years after, and we met in New York, and I said, well, now I'm a yoga instructor. And he goes, oh, that makes sense. He said, you always like to exercise. You really like people. You like to understand what people are about. And he said, I think that, kind of makes sense. So honestly, for me, I had done some of it in college. And I talk about this in my memoir. When I was 18, I was severely anorexic, which, as you know, is a real mental illness, emotional illness.
It is.
Like 90 pounds. And I weigh like 118 pounds now, and I am thin. So anyway, I was, for many years, I didn't even talk about that because there's so much shame around that illness. And it was terrible. Well, that was 18. I had it again when I was 24. Well, the first time and then not again, thank God, because some people get very ill, like Karen Carpenter, and die. So I'm pretty strong-willed. I got out of it. But when I was 18, I was lost. And I got sent to therapy at University of New Hampshire. And this man, whose name I forget, put me in the corner. I don't know why in the corner. I think like the punished child, in child's pose, which is just, the bowing down, very relaxing, restorative. And I thought it was a little crazy, but it was my introduction to the soothing aspect of yoga. And then when I was married and became a nutritionist and had a pretty thriving practice working with physicians and stuff, I just thought, oh yeah, right. I took some yoga when I was in college. And I remember that was very relaxing. And this is starting to get stressful having a career here, and everything's happening really well, but I got to handle it. And so I did some hatha yoga audio cassettes back then. So I think I always knew in the back of my mind that when I was going through something mental, emotional, that's New York City noise back there, motorcycle, that when I was going through something mental, emotional, the soothing of yoga was what helped me. And then in the 90s, when yoga started to become really popular in the vinyasa form, that is not the form that had soothed me. And yet, as my ex-husband said, I was very athletic. I liked people. I like that. So those ones are more athletic and definitely have helped my flexibility and strength, and particularly through the different phases of life, because I didn't start those until I was in my 40s, talking about your midlife women. And so I think it's never too late, but knowing which yogas are good for you at what stage of life. As a matter of fact, recently we were talking about our YouTube. I've been expanding that a little bit. And I did a couple that I called super agers, because I think that women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, 80s, there's one woman in a class that I study at who's in her 90s, and she can still do like a handstand and a headstand. And so that's the physical aspect, which has many mental, emotional benefits.
Yes, it
So
does.
getting over the fear of being upside down took me a while to get over that. Wow, we're not used to being upside down.
No, we're not. We're
So
not. We're not. I'm not great at poses that are like that. So that's good to hear, because I like to test myself and try some new things, but those ones I'm always like, oh, that's got to be way outside my league. I'm klutzy. I'm not a gymnast. Like, I can't see myself doing
I totally agree with that. And I got to say, at Sewell House, which is my retreat that won the USA Today, I have this machine. I call it a machine, but it's really contraption. And I really didn't think much of it. I got it in the 1990s, but it has helped so many people that come to the retreat because they don't have to put their weight on the head. And it goes on your shoulders, but there's something about not having to set up all this and worry about your neck and that people just go on up into it. So I always say to people, this wasn't like my mission as a yoga instructor, but when you come to Sewell House, a lot of people, and then I teach them how to do it on the wall, which is really pretty easy. But a lot of it is, if you don't know what you're doing, like many things in life, or it's your first time doing it, it's scary. And you better know how to do it right. You
better.
Yeah.
You better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to share with my listeners, like, what your book is about, what it's trying to help us with if we pick it up and read it?
Oh, are we talking about the one that you and I have just?
The one that you're working on.
I'm actually really excited. And exactly like you said, we're in a contest. So the idea that we don't get published by the contest because there's many people entering it. The book proposal process that they took us through was a huge, huge gift. And you had to do the work. And through that, at first I was going to call it Demystifying the Chakras through Kundalini Yoga. But then I didn't want it to necessarily be like, as I did what we had to do, which was the competitive research of other titles and what we wanted to get across to our readers, I was really clear that I wanted it to be a book for healing with some techniques in it, that it doesn't matter whether you call them yoga, because some of the techniques in Kundalini yoga are really not like other forms of yoga. We use vibration a lot, means chanting. We use breathing a lot. And yes, we do physical stuff. So my book ended up being titled, for the time being, Healing Through Kundalini Awareness. And so one of the women said, put in Kundalini. Well, if you know what Kundalini is, you're like, oh, that's interesting. And they're going to talk to us about that. And if you don't know what Kundalini is, what is this thing that when I'm aware of it can help me with my healing? And that's exactly what it is. It's really just being aware of our own vitality, our own life force energy, and how it can heal us, like Louise Hay did,
I love that. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you're familiar with my, my stuff, because in our small group, we all would present to each other, but awareness and compassionate self-awareness is really what I'm helping people to have, is like a key element, I think, to any healing process, to any growth process, honestly, and to be in your best self, to be able to stay there, because that's an evolutionary dynamic process. It's not a static place that I go stay and I'm there all my life. No. Like, we evolve as a human across our lifetime. Without awareness, you can't really do that. So I love that. I actually love that. I think that will be really a great title for you, because I do think that a lot of us at this stage, we hit this weird life, I don't like it, but I don't know why kind of a thing. That's one of the first places women are gravitating towards, is just like, I need to be aware. I need to understand this a little bit more.
Yeah. It's very, very true. And it might be awareness that they're not happy in their marriage anymore, or they're not happy in their career anymore, or there's a friendship that's not serving them anymore, or that's something that they're doing. I mean, one thing I was doing, and COVID really helped me with this, ironically, I worked so hard as a yoga instructor in New York City. I loved it, but it was time for me. I was around 65 years old when COVID hit, and I'm not ever going to retire. As I said to someone the other day, as long as I got energy and breath in me and I'm healthy enough to do it, I'm going to teach. However, it was imbalanced. There's that word again. I was not doing self-care, Natalie. I was working 7 days a week whenever someone needed me, my own classes, but also helping others, because that's what I like to do. I felt like a doctor on call. I would take the late night classes. I would early, and people knew they could, and I would always do my best to teach an excellent class. However, I didn't take vacations. My second husband was like, there's no time for us, which wasn't inappropriate, and after all, my marriage broke for other reasons. I started to reflect more. So we're all evolving. And then COVID a lot of the yoga studios in New York and my employment here, and it's much less, and I'm much happier.
Isn't that interesting? So like COVID was the ultimate in disruptors of our patterns for sure. But it sounds like it had that value for you, that it gave you some time to reflect and look at what's working and not working.
And do the things I wanted to do. I would not have time for entrepreneur and working with the editor I worked with. I really needed that. I mean, I was working hours a day, as you and I talked about, on a professional book proposal, never done that myself. I would not have had the time to do that. No way. So, you know, it's really important for people to become aware, which is what we're talking about, and prioritize. And I think there's a really fine line, and I'm not at all a financial advisor, but for people to prioritize the value of time. Because as I get older, I really feel like time is such a commodity, such a commodity. So yes, time is money. And yes, we need to work to pay our bills. But where can you find that again, I use that word balance, where, you know, you have time for yourself. And I liked your word integration, because when we lay down at the end of any yoga practice, some people like to pop up and they don't like that. And they're like, well, I don't need to relax. Well, it's not just relaxing. That last part is the integration.
Yes, exactly.
Of everything they've done, whatever type of yoga they've just been doing, integrate it into your body, into your mind, into your breath, you know, into your energy. Let it all work together and integrate with its own wisdom.
I love that. I love that. I end some of our guided meditations that I do in my group coaching with that idea of like, how will you take this into the rest of your day? Or how will you take this into the rest of your week? It kind of depends on what we were meditating on at the time. But I think that is so valuable. And there's so much about how we function as humans that's like, it's broken down into parts. And we stop seeing that we're bigger than the sum of our parts, right? So if you're always focused on, I've got to do this part of my life and this part of my life and this part of my life, and not how do I integrate all of that, balance still gives us this impression that it's all the parts have to be in balance. And I really think it's that all of us needs to be better integrated in who we are as our true person and our true alignment with this world, whatever it is that we bring to this. And most of us by this time in adulthood are kind of wrestling with this idea of not wanting to be stagnant, but wanting to have a legacy in our life, which is one of the central developmental stages by Erik Erikson, who's a clinical psychologist. So or a developmental psychologist. So that's kind of my reference point, but it's true. It's super true. We hit this middle part and we're like, well, we want to make a difference. We want to leave this place a little bit better than we found it. And maybe that's just, you know, in a personal way, like for our family or our friends or our children, whatever. But some of us, it's a little bit bigger. It's like social change. We want to see, you know, a shift in humanity by the time we get out of here.
I think that's kind of the whole approach with the Hay House mentality, right? All those wonderful healers from all over the world that had the consciousness. I mean, we had an interior designer in our group, you know, whatever it is you are doing to make people's consciousness be elevated. And yes, it was one way, but you know, there are many, many ways. And we had the woman that did her pilgrim. I mean, you know, people do different things to get to the next level. Right.
I know. I'm so excited that some of you are interested in coming on, because it was such a group of women that were writing from this place of what, you know, I learned and what makes a difference in the world. And you're right. It was very different. There were some of us that were things like interior designers. There was yourself. There was somebody that just went on a pilgrimage and came out of tech. Didn't she come out of tech?
Yes.
So like her life trajectory was very different than what she was writing about, but it's that kind of integration. Like when she took a step back and was able to see it in that wider perspective, it was really important to her to get that on paper for other people.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the thing about people's stories. And in my memoir, I wrote some stuff that was really, really personal. And some people are like, why'd you write that? I'm like, because I think we all have secrets. And if we don't acknowledge some of that stuff that you don't tell everybody in your dinner conversation or, you know, but I think then when you reveal those things, and I think a lot of people are doing that these days, and particularly famous people, you know, they're all coming out. Good. They're coming out with memoirs whether they had an addiction issue or, estrangement from their family issue, or these are all very common human issues. So
yeah.
That one woman that read my book, I have to say, is a retired therapist. And she said, I would have given this book to every woman in their early 30s. Well, that was very nice of her. But I mean, I saw women that came to my retreat that were very changed by Eat, Pray, Love, which I didn't read. But you read these books about women's journeys. And I think the reason we're sharing our story is to help people go through their stories, basically
totally
to help go through their stories.
Yeah.
So back to the yoga, again, I think what some people need to understand is that there's so many different types of yoga. It's not for everybody. And though they should not just turn away from one type of yoga they go to and, oh man, that one, they got their leg behind their head. I can't do that. Or they do a head. Yeah, I can't do that. Someone told me that today, and I said, you were just in the wrong class. You went into this class. All sorts of crazy stuff. By the way, there's a poing going on in the background there, and that's my computer, not yours.
And that's yours. The Zoom is actually kind of keeping it out pretty nicely, which Zoom is pretty amazing, because my cats are outside my door right now playing with a little jingly ball and then bouncing off the wall. They're kittens.
That's amazing. Because I can hear the poing when I'm doing my YouTube stuff, and I'm like, oh dear, they're getting a little poing there. But anyway, it's all good.
I think don't worry about it. If it's there, this is real life, people. It's real life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tell me, is there anything that you would advise my listeners and the people that follow me, like if they've never even tried a foray into yoga, where do they start? What should they try?
Well, I want to say there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and I want to say that that's, very popular. And there's one person people love very much. I'm not here to promote her. She doesn't need it. I don't watch her. I don't follow her, but it's Yoga with Adrienne. Like everybody watches Yoga with Adrienne. And she's gone over that tipping point, has millions of followers. I have a YouTube too. I mean, of course I would say, check me out. Mine is much less followers, but I think the only thing I would say about that, really, in my opinion, is I know we're post-COVID and we're still a little tentative, but I think looking for a very good instructor that you've heard word of mouth from other people is good. And I'm not saying that some of the younger, newer teachers aren't very, very good, but if you're going to, just get word of mouth, because I think that one thing that's going on with yoga these days, like I'll tell you an example, a woman that comes to my retreat who lives nearby and took a teacher training years ago, she was taking from a young girl in her community, which is about a half an hour from my retreat. And she said to this young girl who just come out of a 200-hour training, which, you do the math, isn't that much learning. And she said, well, this woman up at this retreat, she's been teaching like whatever it was, 35 years, whatever. I think, I always learn something. I still study, by the way, every week, Natalie, with my mentor teacher. So it's endless. Yeah. And so this girl said,
evolution. It's evolution. That's just how we are.
This girl said, I don't think I need to go there. I've taken my 200-hour. So this is my point. If you ended up getting a girl like that as your teacher, you're going to shortchange yourself, because I teach 200-hour teacher trainings, and I tell my students, you are on the beginning of your journey as a teacher. You better keep studying and learning, because yoga is like life. It's very endless. It's endless, it's really endless. So in answer to that question, I would say, if you're in a community where there are yoga studios, do Google searches, look at the reviews, talk to friends who've done yoga, check out people that are likable and, like that, Yoga with Adrienne. But the only thing is a real yoga teacher who's very good can help you, as you said, it depends on what you want to do with yoga, become more integrated. I mean, in my book, a lot of case studies where people had things like divorces, one person finding out that his father was not his father, his uncle was his father. And he said, I use some of these yoga techniques to get through these kind of traumas that they went through. I've had students that are cancer survivors that while they were going through their cancer, they did the yoga, and it really, really helped them on every level. And particularly one with lung cancer, he had it 13 years ago. And he said, I went in for the test when they gave me the diagnosis. And because I'd been doing Kundalini, I believe my lung capacity was far what they expected. And I got over. I'm not saying yoga is going to cure diseases. I'm just saying that, you get a good teacher and they can help you get through a lot of things. And I think So I would say, look for someone that you have either heard is very good or has very good reviews and testimonials. And yes, peruse the internet. However, I did see one person, luckily I don't remember her name. She was teaching the breathing and Kundalini absolutely wrong and had 450,000 followers.
Oh gosh.
It's a funny time that way,
Yeah. I mean, anybody can put up a YouTube channel, but not everybody has that expertise. So I can see where that's problematic. Is there any places where people could get resources? Like you were breaking it down in the beginning of this podcast. Like there's ones that are more body based and ones that are more meditation and restorative based. Is there any like great resource for people to access to see, which is which and maybe where they'd want to start?
That is an amazingly excellent question. And actually, I don't think there is a resource exactly like that. I think that, if you wanted to delve into, there are articles out there. I'm sure you can find articles, but in terms of like a website resource that breaks them down, I don't know one off the top of my head. I believe probably a lot of teachers, and I'll probably, if I haven't already, write a blog post for my Soul House because we have a blog about that. Yeah. On the Soul House, we do have a little bit of articles about, what is Kundalini yoga? What is Vinyasa yoga? What is restorative yoga? I do think if someone doesn't have the language, like that's kind of what you're asking, is there like a place, a resource that just yoga? These are the different types. Not to my knowledge, and not to that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but not to my knowledge. Yeah.
Well, I'll certainly send people in the direction of Soul House and your resources so that they can at least find the ones that you've blogged.
Yeah, totally. And, we have a monthly newsletter that's been going out for years. And we just got like 100 more signups because of the USA Today. I know.
Look at you. Awesome. Yeah. And you're coming up on your big season. I know. So tell us a little bit about what you guys do through these summer months.
Okay. So we open up in May, and this year we have a couple of special events before our teacher training. So we're not formally open other than those two events, which are all on our website. And then we have a 200-hour teacher training. And then our retreat season this year, it is from July 10th to October 10th. It's shorter than usual. We usually open Memorial Day, but that's just the way we formatted this year. And people can come and go on days of their choosing. There are also certain events we have, like a women's mental health weekend, which is not with a therapist, it's with yoga and chanting. And I don't run that. I don't run these events. We have an a yoga one in, I think, early September. We have a writing one, Columbus Day weekend. We've done many, many years, which is really fabulous. So we have these events. We have a chant fest in July, but it's not, you do not have to participate in events. If you are like a beginner yogi, this is a fabulous, I got to just say, place to come, because we are experienced teachers and we start at your level, and it is very small and personalized. We only have 6 bedrooms, and we don't put people in rooms with anybody else. So you do the math, our classes have like 4 to 6 people. I mean, really small. Not a big commercialized, commodified. It's a very unique boutique. I mean, I guess I just came up with that.
It's a boutique. It is boutique yoga. That's a big thing now, though, that people, or concierge yoga, because it's like people want it to meet their needs.
Yes.
They want it to come to what they need.
On that note, what you were asking me is, because we teach so many forms of yoga, we really come in on the level they're at and give them what they need. So we would not throw like an Ashtanga, really physical class as someone in their 60s who's never done yoga, who has arthritis and comes to the retreat, right? So, we really cater to where the person's at. And we managed to do that I'd say pretty well with our small groups.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, is there anything I haven't asked you, things that you would like to share with my listeners?
Well, again, like I said, I think yoga is just, to me, an ongoing study. But I think I think the main thing, because this is what you're about, is that it really helps people in their evolution. And I really think no matter what type of yoga you choose, if you resonate with it and you commit to it, you are going to see like major changes and of awareness. And my Iyengar teacher, who is 74 years old, what I love about her is Iyengar is the most anatomically based yoga, but it doesn't interest me just to go and listen to anatomy. So she will quote poets, and she will talk about life, and she brings in her wisdom. And that is the way I like to teach yoga too. And that is the way a lot of Kundalini yoga teachers do. They bring in stories, Natalie, you who enjoy stories. We learn so much from the stories of how something can do something for us. So I guess what I would just say to your listeners is explore. Make it an exploration, and please have them feel free, honestly, to contact me, because I do the best I can to answer questions and get back to people. There's no bot on my thing. I had to change my voicemail to say, we are a real business, so that like the spam people don't bother me, and people that really want to ask a question, I'm not always right by the phone, but I am a real business. I'm a real person, and I care about you, and I will get back to you.
That's amazing. And I'll make sure that they have access to all of that information, so that if they want to hear a little bit more or get a more specific question answered, they can reach out to you. Because it's not just you, it's, you have people that, like you said, are doing these programs. And so you have quite a wealth of wisdom there. And, when I do my free group coaching and even my paid group coaching, we dive into various kinds of self-care, and energetic healing is one of the ones that I like to highlight. Not my area of expertise, but like you were saying, there's people that have traumas that then will find different yoga positions that help them release how that body is being stored, because the body keeps that score. It doesn't let go of that trauma. And these are some of the energetic healing modalities that are so vital, because there's only, awareness is very helpful. But what I'm loving about what I'm hearing is it's all those things within yoga. Like there's very many layers to this. So there's awareness, and there's self-identity, and knowing who you really are. And, there's restoring yoga and things of that nature. It can be, you can meet them where they're at, and it can be many things for a person.
Definitely. Yeah. And what you were just saying too about awareness, you have to act on that awareness. And in yoga, they call that kriya. Like a kriya is an action. And so again, back to that book that I am working on, and, right now, I give people tools that are not very time consuming, because that's another thing in the time that we live in, the hours and hours and hours that I put in the 80s doing that, and my colleagues, even us in our practice now, this is what they call the most accelerated form of yoga. So you can do 3 minutes of hud, 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 which in my research, one of my teacher trainers from 2009 is doing every day. And she works in the real world. She does that for 3 days to get sent 3 minutes, 3 days before she goes to work every day to get centered. Diligent.
Okay. Yeah. To be grounded when you leave your home to go out to work. Very important. Or go out onto the interwebs to work, because everybody has a different way that they're accessing work these days. Do you have any suggestions with that? You had said earlier, like, I know people post-COVID are a little and then you talked about there's a lot of stuff on the interwebs on YouTube or whatever that you can access. But do you have any preference? Like, should people go to in-person stuff? Should they go online? Does it matter?
I think that's the taste of the teacher and the person. But really for me, I really am an old timer. I'm an old timer. And like, I personally think that one-on-one, not one-on-one, like you have to go to a private client thing, which happens too. I've done a lot of work on Zoom, and it's really, really changed my teaching and helped me a lot, not have to run around as much. So I think there's benefit to the Zoom.
Sure.
But I think for people that are learning, that really want to have someone work with them, I lean towards the personal side. And I think also, once you know each other, like I have someone I've been teaching probably 30 years Kundalini privately. I used to go to her apartment twice a week in New York City. And even though I'm in New York City now, we've graduated to Zoom because that's more convenient. But I think once you know each other, and even me, my 2 mentor teachers that I study with that are 74 and 84 years old, they now have live classes back again in New York, but I'm not going to those, but I diligently go to their Zooms every week because I know their teaching techniques well enough. I also know that if I went, I might get some benefit, but I've had them correct me for so many years, like over 20 years, both of them.
Yeah.
I know that they know what they've taught me about my body, and I've learned from them what I know about my body. Though visually, I remember once I was online with my Iyengar teacher, and she could see it. She's like, "You're in shoulder stand, Donna. Your legs need to be straighter." So you can see some things on Zoom, but the live is what I would lean toward if you have a choice and you can do it.
I gotcha. And that personal touch too. So teachers that record and you're doing things, that's one way of learning, but having some interactive Zoom classes is important as well, because then
I
people
think
can
so.
see you and your forms and be able to
Yeah.
advise you.
And if you take it really to the level of student-teacher relationship, what they call guru, I'm not a guru, I'm just a very experienced teacher. And some teachers that haven't been teaching very long call themselves masters, which I think is pretty interesting. But in terms of that, I mean, I had one woman that came and took my retreat, my training, and she said that Adrian was her guru and she was going to write her a letter, and she was all, ha, ha. And I thought, well, you don't even know Adrian. I mean, you had no interaction with Adrian. Like you said, if you have a Zoom interaction, like you and I are having a Zoom interaction. I worked with a woman in the UK during COVID who found me, and she recorded my classes and she still uses them. We had interaction. I sat with her, we went into it and said, so what's going on with you today? What can we work on today? That's different to me. I'm not saying that she's not doing amazing things. She's got to be. So many people love her. There's benefit to that. But if you really want to get a student-teacher relationship, I don't think it can happen unless it's live, initially.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm a therapist, so you're not going to hear any pushback from me about that. But, there's value too to our putting out our books and putting stuff in blogs and recorded things. It gives people a taste of us. It gives people, maybe they hear something and they are like, yes, she is speaking to me. This is exactly what I'm going through. And and feeling like their story is heard, are more likely then to engage with us. That's definitely also valuable.
We're putting things, you and I both, up on YouTube. I mean, that really helps.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the beginner, like we're talking rote beginner, it just makes logical sense that if someone watch you and correct you, that is a good starting point. Just like I said, that's what I'm doing with my teachers. I was with them, over 20 years every week, even though I was full-time teaching, I went to their classes. So I know what it is to be watched by them. And I think years of having them watch me, I've got a pretty good experience under my belt of my body, but my body changes. So now I've had to work with those changes. So, either way, as long as they're doing yoga and they don't hurt themselves, I encourage people to seek it out.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Yes, it's fun for me to see the people that I've been seeing for months now in a different way, and to let you guys share, because I had, the great experience of being able to hear about all of these different things. Man, we had a photographer from New York that was in our group that's going to do like what looks to me like what we would have called a coffee table book, because it's mostly the beautiful pictures, but she kind of went around New York after COVID, which, I mean, wow, those were very moving, powerful photos. So, I mean, there were so many of us, but I just knew that my listeners and the people that follow me could use this information as well. So I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. I've been interviewed on different things over the years, but I'm new to this whole podcast thing because, again, I'm an old timer. So this is my first podcast interview, and I thank you for giving me that opportunity, Natalie.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I'm new to the podcast thing myself, but man, am I having a good time. Super fun. I don't know why, but I just think it's fun. Probably because this is the most like what I do for a living, right? Is just a one-on-one talk to somebody. And even when I'm not interviewing somebody, I'm looking at the people that I work with, like that's who's in my lens, and I'm talking straight to them, and I know my stuff. And so it's a dialogue when I do the podcast. So I think I just enjoy it because it's second nature to me.
Yeah. Well, it's a people thing, you get to connect with people, and that's what we like to do. Yeah,
definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you again. Is there any questions that you have for me? Anything before
I appreciate this opportunity. I hope that our little banter here will be helpful to someone. I just want to say I was talking to someone recently about one of my students, us sharing books or podcasts, whatever. I don't know who the author was, but she went to a Barnes and Noble book signing. This was years ago, I think, when there was less of all this social media and all this stuff. And my student, who was also a writer, and that was kind of before I wrote a little chakra book in 1993, but more before I was thinking of really writing and stuff. Anyway, I think this is a good final message. She asked this author, this well-known author, so how many readers do you have to have of this book that's coming out, or any book that you write, to consider it a success? And I think in this day and age, when we are so measured by like how many social media followers we have and everything, to remember this well-known author said, oh, I consider my book a success if one person has read it. So if one person listens to our podcast and gets something out of it, enjoys it, we are doing something for one person. Yeah.
We are doing something. Exactly. That's the other reason I like podcasts and the YouTube channel and the books, is that it kind of stays out there in perpetuity. Because I still will get comments from people from stuff that I wrote 5 years ago and be like, okay. So, like I knew it needed to go out there 5 years ago, but somebody needed to receive it then, right now. So it stays there. It stays there forever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I'm adding a little addition here. It's the legal stuff. Just so you're aware, nothing in any of these podcasts constitutes actual psychotherapy. Yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, but everything here is just educational in nature and is a suggestion of things that you could be doing in your own life to learn how to love the life that you're in instead of waiting for a life that you're dreaming of to come towards you. So just remember, this is not therapy. And if ever you need any resources for mental health, look in my notes and I'll always have a little blurb at the bottom where you can click on a link and get those services for yourself.